Hello and welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports and another event recap. It's a series of videos where I talk about events that I have done. I'm not a pure racer, so I call these event recaps. So if you noticed, it's a fairly lengthy video. I'll try to add some chapters, but no promises there. And I encourage you to listen to the video from beginning to end, because even under a chapter heading, I may talk about something, I may go off on a tangent, and that golden nugget may be the one thing that can make or break your next endurance event. So I would suggest, anyway, that you listen to the video in its entirety and take notes, or watch it several times. Pass it on with your friends as well. Okay. So 600-kilometer event, the very first thing I want to do is thank all the volunteers who made it possible for me to ride my bike. Wei San is the Regional Brevet Administrator, RBA for short, and he had some folks at each one of the controls. Some were manned controls, which, as it implies, means that someone's there, and then there were some unmanned controls. But there were folks I didn't get a chance to see, say hello, or thank them for their time. So I appreciate you folks at the manned controls that I did not come through and say hello. So I thank you now. And then Tim Sullivan was at the finish. And he's a very accomplished brevet rider. And so he knows what it takes to finish these things. And he volunteered for the finish line. So, okay. I am going to talk about, 5 or 6 things. So the results, preparation, the route, my bike equipment, my clothing, my nutrition, the things that worked and the things that could use some improvement, my recovery as well. Which I'll give you the headline now on the recovery side of things. The reason this video is a little bit delayed, it happened, the event happened on April 22nd. It's now May 12th. Came down with COVID, and so I was out of function for a week's time. So, and then of course there's work, right? So anyway, let's talk about the results. Now, one thing I need to make clear from the outset is brevets aren't races, right? But I race them. It's just what I do. I challenge myself to improve my time, my equipment, my choice of pacing strategy, nutrition strategy, and all those things. So I race them, generally against myself, but if someone else is in the lead pack with me, look, people won't admit it, so I'll say it, they're racing it. They are. And the mid-pack and trail pack, they call brevets non-races, and they take it more at their leisure, and that's their thing. So we're always racing something, whether it be against ourselves or against other riders. And I know that this doesn't ingratiate me into the brevet folks, and kind of why I left brevet riding for a long time. I was doing them back in 2003, 2004, so 20-ish years ago. And then I moved on to doing double centuries, where they're timed and you're listed by time. I mean, the thing with brevets, they list you by alphabetical order. 500-mile races, the Furnace Creek 508, Silver State 508, Hoodoo 500, Race Across America 2007. So, I kind of moved away from brevet riding because, well, I wanted to race my bike. I wanted to challenge myself. All right, so let's get on with the results. If you've watched my recaps before, I don't name folks, and I don't give specific times. I just go through in hour blocks. There were 36 riders, and I believe only 31 rode with us on April 22nd, and then I believe the other 5 were worker ride times. So being an unsupported event, whether you're a workers ride or on event day, your time's going to be fairly similar, except for the fact that if you're on a workers ride, you may be like, oh God, this road is flooded and we got to make a U-turn and go find another road to get through this area. So there are those things that can befall a workers ride. And we've had a lot of rain in northern and middle, well, I mean the whole state, but northern California and Central Coast, and you can just find tons of news coverage of heavy flow, overflowing riverbeds and roads just being basically knocked out. So anyway, all right, so I had a personal goal to beat my PR of 27:20, which I had set 14 years ago, and so mission accomplished. Lori and I were the first 2 to come in at 26:05. And then there was 1 rider at 30, 1 rider at 33 hours, 6 riders at 35, 1 rider at 36, 2 riders at 37, 8 riders at 38, 8 riders at 39, and 5 DNFs and 2 did not start. Now, the time limit for a 600K is 40 hours. So you could see of the 31 that started, 16, so basically half finished between the 38th hour and the 39th hour and some change under the 40-hour time limit. So you can ride it as slow or as fast as you want. You have 40 hours. At mile 226, there was an overnight hotel that you could have reserved a room beforehand, or there was a hospitality room, which I didn't see, but other 600Ks that I've done, you got your drop bags and, probably can curl up in a corner somewhere and catch a nap and then get back on the bike if you didn't want to get a room. And there was also some hot food from what I understand. So, but I didn't partake in the food at the controls because I had, Lori and I had a dear friend of hers to drive us, because that's the other thing. This was a point-to-point event. And so for me, it was over 250 miles away from where I live. So Noreen drove us up with our bikes and clothing and whatever. And then she was at the controls in case we needed anything. And controls are sometimes manned or sometimes they're unmanned, and it's a grocery store or 7-Eleven or something, and you go in, you get your receipt, and it's a timestamp. And of course, you're going to need supplies. So generally, you would stop anyway. So that's how we got up there. Noreen gave us a ride, and then she was at the controls. And we'll get into more of that later. All right, so as far as the prep, the 400K was March 18th, I believe, was the 400K. And then this was 422. So about a month, a couple of days, a few days. So that 400K, I struggled from like mile 60 something to like mile 120 something. And then I came back. But I really don't know why. So I couldn't really fix that. But the good news is, with each one of these events, it's 200K, 300K, 400K, and now 600K. You get to work on your equipment choices and your nutrition and your pacing and all that stuff. But for me, it was the electronics. So my cycling computer was fine at 16 hours, 41 minutes total time for the 400K. But for Lori and Barbara, their computers needed to get plugged in. The same Wahoo Roam computer. But I had plenty of battery life. They didn't. And then their headlights were out as well. So just an electronic mess in the last hour of the thing. I mean, we were pacing for an R60, which is 16 hours, 12 minutes for the 400K. But with all this stuff, you know, we came in at 1641. But, you know, thems are the breaks, as they say. So I ended up getting a Garmin 1040 solar. I got the extra battery, but honestly, I didn't even need it because I got, so 26 hours, 5 minutes total time. I still had 57% battery life. Now, another thing, I was pretty much just riding, and anytime I was in aero bars, stuff like that, I was blocking the screen from it getting direct sunlight. So it only got like 2 hours and 42 minutes of extra battery time from the solar screen. So it was just the direction we were traveling. Every time I'd look down, I could see that my head was covering my computer. So I wasn't getting all the benefit of the solar panel. But like I said, I got 2 hours and 42 minutes back. You know, it's 26 hours of riding, but of course, a lot of that is also at night. And it was foggy in the morning, so there was time there where it just wasn't getting direct sunlight, and, you know, so, but 57% still left at the finish. I had the best GPS. You know, there are a few options you can choose. I chose the best because, well, I didn't want to get lost, but we got lost anyway. Heart rate monitor, power meter pedals, those kinds of things. All right, so that's the Garmin, and then lighting situation we'll talk about in a minute. And as I mentioned, it was 250 plus miles north from where I live. So, you know, some folks did one-way rentals, and some folks did, well, the trains were an option, but I don't know who took that option. And then the others had, I guess, a friend take them up or something. So, all right, so the route, it started in Santa Maria, kind of came south, went inland a little bit, came back, and then south again to the finish. So the idea, or the allure for me, was that it should have been tailwinds all the way. So tailwind south. Typically the winds blow north to south or onshore, so from west to east. And so if you're coming south, it kind of, just depending on the angle of the coast as you're, you know, hugging it like this, sometimes it's tailwind, sometimes it's a little bit of a crosswind, and then you turn inland, which is east for us, it should push you inland. And that became a problem later because, you know, if you're riding in 95 plus degree heat and you got a tailwind on a hill, you're just roasting, right? So you've got no cooling air coming across your face. The wind is blowing you from behind. Yeah, you may climb a little bit faster, but you're just, there's a cost to it because you're just getting so hot and you're not getting a chance to get any cooling across your face. Okay, so Epic Ride Weather. It's a very cool app, and that app, some folks have been complaining it's not working so great. It seems to be working for me in some of these Southern California places that I've plugged in a ride GPS file. If you're not aware of it, it's a cool app. You plug in the time that you're going to do your event, and then it shows you, at a 15 mile per hour average speed, you can say that's the speed I'm going to do. So then, at different points on your event, you could see what the weather is going to be like: heat, rain, wind, direction. Unfortunately, I'm having trouble paying for the app, and I want to pay for the app, but it just seems I don't know, I've deleted the app, reinstalled it, I've tried, and just, I'm going to have to send them an email directly saying, hey, take my money, you know. There were no major climbs on this route now. It was 15,000 feet of climbing, but there were just no major climbs, I should say. And just lots of rolling terrain, up, down, here, there. There was a section when you went inland, I think it was like 30-something miles, and you gained about 5,000 feet. But I mean, it was just incremental, and I really didn't feel that we were climbing, but because it was such a long stretch of roads, plural. Then you would expect that when you get back to the coast in the San Diego, Orange County area, that we would be pushed south. And so that was also part of the allure. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case, but we'll get to that later. The roads were great. The traffic was minimal for a good portion of the first 100 or so miles, maybe a little more. But the pavement was all tore up. So we live in a bubble here in San Diego. Our roads are very, very, very smooth. Bike lanes in most business and school areas. But yeah, you're on these country roads, no traffic. We've had a lot of rain, as I mentioned, so lots of green hills and spring flowers everywhere. So, I mean, lots of the course was just, the northern part of the course was just really, really nice. Eventually you go into the LA stuff, and then, you know, you just got to ride through that stuff. And then you get to the Orange County coast and San Diego coast, and then you're fine. But Wade did a really good job of getting us out of, you know, really bad and ugly LA areas. So, I mean, kudos again for just a great route. So I think that's all for that. All right, let's talk about the bike. So I rode my Ritchie Road Logic steel bike, and I did a video, I believe, on my 400K with the bike setup. So I can link that below so you can kind of see how that went. Basically the same setup. I had, I think the only difference, yeah, I added aero bars that were not on the 400K. The aero bars I've had for a long time. They're profile design, and they're very minimalist. They have no adjustments. They have nothing to, you know, you can't move the armrests and forward, aft, or side to side. You just, you know, it's a fixed aero bar. I like it. It's minimalist, less things to go wrong and break or to come loose during an event. So I like that. I used my head wheels in the 46 millimeter. I figured, you know, there's not much climbing on this route, so might as well use the head wheels. It was 15,000 feet, but it was just so spread out that, you know, I just thought the 46 millimeter wheels would be fine. 30 mil tubeless Continental STR tires. I did the 400K and the 600K and no flats. So I don't know. The 300K had tons of flatting issues, but nothing on the 400K or 600K. No flats, no mechanicals. The top tube bag that I had is this guy here. Sits on the top tube, this being the head tube, that being the saddle. And inside here, I just basically carry a few gels. I carry in this little pocket here, I carry my Dynaplug. Oops. And then I also carry these. And these are foldable readers. And they're very, very practical. And for a good portion of the night, I had these basically on just so I could read if I needed to read the cue sheet or if I needed to read the computer screen. After hours and hours and hours and hours, things get blurry for me, and you decide what works for you. But this is what works for me. Top 2 bag. The burrito bag. Yes, Tim Taylor loves my burrito bag. And I love getting his goat. So this is the burrito bag that's on the front of my bike. And of course, you know, he's like, oh, why are you so dense? Don't you know frame bags are so much more aero? And I keep insisting I'm going to ride my burrito bag on the front of the bike. And here's the thing, Tim Taylor. You never responded to my questions about how many ultras have you done. You gave me some snide remark about, oh, sorry I didn't respond yet because I'm preparing for my 10th ultra. Listen, if you really have been doing ultras, then you know it doesn't come down to aerodynamics. Okay? So let's be frank. During these events, not because I'm a super strong rider or anything like that, but I'm usually having to wait for people. And I am mentoring. I was mentoring Barbara through the 200, 300, and 400K Brevet, and now I'm helping Lori, you know, get through the 600K and then the 1200K in Paris. I'm always having to wait for people that I'm riding with, whether it be slowing up and waiting at the top of a climb, or, you know, people having issues with hydration and cramps and all this other stuff. So when everyone cracks, it has nothing to do with aerodynamics. So I love teasing Tim Taylor, and I love riding my burrito bag, but it didn't stop me from being the first finisher, right? And I had to slow down a lot for the other people I was riding with because they all cracked. And, you know, aerodynamically, theoretically, wind tunnel, blah, blah, blah. Sure, a frame bag is more aero, but does it even matter? Because it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You know, 300 plus, 500 plus, 750 miles for the 1200K in Paris. It's not going to matter because you can only ride as fast as your slowest rider. So it doesn't matter that you're full on aero if you have to wait for the slowest rider. And that slowest rider could be you. I was that slowest rider during the 400K from mile 60 something to 120 something. Everybody was up the road and I was struggling. I had heat issues. I was cramping. I'm like 65 miles. What am I doing cramping? This is highly unusual for me. But, you know, I was the slowest rider. And then eventually I came back and I was leading everyone to the finish at, 225, 230 miles in because, well, like I said to the group I was riding with, this ride doesn't begin until the last 40K. And the same thing with this 600K. This thing doesn't begin until maybe the last, 100K, 60K. Anyway, so that's the burrito bag that I used. I did, however, just because, why not be aero without making much effort to be aero? So an aero helmet, aero road helmet, okay? I had a Nalini skin suit because the chamois is really good, and I've worn it for 100 plus milers and stuff like that. And so why not have it, right? It's got the whole aero design stuff on the shoulders and sleeves and then small pockets. And then, like I said, the chamois works really well for me, but it doesn't work for 378 miles. So more on that later. And then I wore my Lake lace-ups, but I had shoe covers, up to mid-calf to cover up the dirty air of the laces. And some of you will notice that I've got the no-tie laces on here. So you just basically, by the way, if you've not ridden lace-up shoes while cycling, you're missing some increased comfort that you could have. than a BOA system. And just as an aside, how many of you have had this happen on your Wahoo straps? It's annoying. I don't know. I mean, they're made very cheaply, and that's the little pad that is supposed to be making contact with your skin. But yeah, so that was the helmet, the shoes, the clothing. And excuse me, someone just showed up. I'll be with you in a minute. Thank you. Sorry for that. And then also, I love these 38-ounce bottles. Absolutely love them. Crank tank, stupid idea. I'm never going to use that on my bike. These bottles are a lifesaver. As I mentioned, it was 95 plus. It was an area where we were riding through these farmlands, and well, Matt had dropped off, I don't know, mile 120 something, mile 130 something maybe. And then Fred was having issues, and and then Lori was having issues, and I was the only one who still had fluids. And I was passing it around, trying to keep people rolling, looking at farmlands, looking to farmhouses, looking to see if someone had a spigot that we could get some water from. But we had to stop at mile 164 to get Fred and Lori some fluids and some ice or whatever. I don't know what Fred was having, but so yeah, love these 38-ounce bottles. I always have enough fluids for myself and nutrition. So we'll get to that nutrition in a minute. And as I've mentioned before with this burrito bag, I mean, there are times I'm pushing other riders, like physically hand on their back, pushing them to get them to the next control and stuff like that. So it, yeah, it doesn't come down to aerodynamics. Okay. I did bring some squirt lube, a tiny, tiny, tiny little bottle of squirt lube just in case I needed it, but I was fine. Along with the skin suit, what I was also wearing is the Pearl Izumi arm and knee coolers, because I put those on at the beginning of the event and I don't take them off until the end. They are thin enough that they are providing protection from the sun and I stay cool enough in them, but they're also enough that I stay warm. So that's a good thing when it's a little bit chilly. It just depends on the weather, okay? So the weather was chilly in the morning. It was foggy, misty, and then it was really hot during the day. And then once the sun went down, it started to cool off. And then in the middle of the night, there was plenty of moisture in the air. So I mean, I was stuff was just dripping off my helmet. So it wasn't rain, but we were just getting wet from so many hours of riding in this mist. So that's that. And then the morning was overcast, which was kind of nice because the last thing you want to do is, get a hot morning after you've had, 20 something plus hours on the bike. All right, nutrition. So a lot of folks ask me about nutrition all the time, and then they say things like, oh, I struggle with nutrition. I don't know. And I'm like, nutrition is probably the easiest thing about these events. I mean, you just got to drink and eat as much as you can stomach, right? So, and if you're not doing your training rides by fueling yourself, then you're not going to know how much you can stomach, right? So, after so many years of doing endurance events, I just decided to make my own nutrition product so I could just use it because I know it works. So the majority of my calories, like 90% or more, came from liquid powder, right? So I had, have it written down somewhere here, 860, oh, here it is, 860 calories per bottle. And I had, you know, those little Rev sandwiches. I had only about 4 or 5 of those. And that was it. The rest of the time, I was fluids. You know, this product, electrolytes, and just staying on the road. Now, what's very interesting about this is that I always struggle at night to stay awake. 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I struggle to stay awake. So I didn't have a lot of protein, which I normally do with another product, or solids. And I wonder if that helped me stay awake throughout the whole night. I mean, I wouldn't say I was buzzing with energy, but I wasn't sleepy. And my pace never really slowed down the whole night. I was fine. I mean, I had to wait for Lori and get her through the night. But other than that, I mean, I don't know. But did that hamper my recovery? Maybe, because my legs were really sore, you know, Sunday, Monday. I rode Tuesday, but we'll get back onto recovery in a minute. So let me just read a few of these things here. So yeah, I was much more carb heavy than I have been in the past, and I never felt hungry, because one of the things that you try to eat protein, whether in a powder, drink mix, or in solid foods, to satiate that hunger. But because I had so many calories coming in all the time, you know, I averaged over 300 calories per hour for this thing. And I don't know, maybe more protein to keep the muscle soreness away 2 days later. But then again, you know, it's 378 miles with 15,000 feet. You'd expect to be sore, I think, anyway. So yeah, so when I made my bottles, it was 860 calories, 215 grams of carbs per bottle, 1690 milligrams of sodium, and 346 milligrams of potassium in each bottle. And we'll get into how far the controls were from each other, but I would pull into a control and still have stuff left, right? So love the 38-ounce bottles. They work perfect for this unsupported event stuff. Let's talk about the ride. It was a 6 a.m. start. So, you know, we've had like 5 a.m. starts before. It's 6 a.m. So usual group, right? Very small, but, you know, the usual thing. Within just a couple of traffic lights, it's already split up. And we made a couple of wrong turns right at the beginning of the thing. And so the trail was passing us again as we got back on course. And so things split up pretty quick. We get to the first climb, about 17-ish miles, so just shy of an hour. And we go up this climb, which wasn't much. I mean, it was like 3-ish miles, 5.5%, you know, because it undulates, right? So it's not a steady grade. And I got dropped bad. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm in this lead group of 7 and they're up the road. And I'm like, wow. And I look down at my power and I'm like, wow, I'm at 210, 220 watts is kind of where I want to be, just a little over 3.2 watts per kilo. I'm just going to have to let them go. And there's no point in chasing them. But even still, my heart rate got over 160. It was pretty high for beginning an ultra. And that was about 87% of my FTP. So I was like, okay, just let them go and, you know, chase chase later. I'm a very competent and confident descender, so I made up a lot of time on the descent. And then we got to the farmlands again, and I could see them, or I could see a group of 3 up the road, and so I just kept, riders being in sight helps, right? And so I bridged up to them, and that was Lori and 2 other guys, and we rode together for a little bit, and then things split up quite a bit after that. So I don't remember much about the first control. We were using Life 360, so Noreen knew where we were, and then our friends at home, so Jess, my girlfriend, and then Barbara, lady that rides with us, she wasn't at the event, so she could watch on Life 360 where we were. So at the first control, well, let's go over the controls. The controls were at mile 37.4, 51.7, 126.6, 127.6, 183, 226, 290, 327, 372, and 376 being the finish. So the distance between the controls, first one was 37.4, then 14.3, then 75.9, let's just call it 76 miles, 55.5, 43.1, 64, 36.9, 45, and then the very last 4 miles, there was a mission that we went to, and then the finish line. And this was called the Mission 600 because we were visiting 9 out of the 21 missions, and so Mission 600. All right, so the very first control, I don't remember much about it, 37.4 miles in. At the second control, mile 51.7, we were in Solvang, everyone else enjoying a beautiful Saturday, and I'm on my bike on a long day. But we pulled into this mission or something, and then when we came out of that, we got lost. And, people we could see riders coming and going, and we're like, oh, which way are we supposed to go? And so we, right there at mile 50 something, we've already added like 2.5 extra miles. Frustrating more than anything else. Anyway, we get on the road. Now, Garmin Wahoo type of thing. So the Wahoo starts blinking and whatever because you're off course. I like that. The Garmin, you go off course and it tries to recalculate a route. Now, there are things that these software engineers put into these units that don't work for people who are doing a prescribed route where you're going to be DQ'd because you went off route. Now, you can go off route, you just got to get back on route. And you could always do more than your 376 miles, but you can't do less, right? So you get lost, you get back on course, okay, then you go. But I don't like the Garmin to reroute, and it starts doing that. And then it's telling you turn here, turn there, and now you're off course, and I don't want it to do that. So if anyone knows how to block that out, to block out the rerouting, I have to follow a prescribed route. I don't have a choice to reroute something, okay? So I struggle more with the Garmin on that scenario, whereas the Wahoo, it seems a little bit more straightforward when you're off course and you're trying to get back on. Anyway, so now we're back on the coast on the 101 or the 1, heading southbound. The first 100 miles we covered in 5 hours, 31 minutes total time. Normalized power for those that use power, 162. I didn't do the watts per kilogram, but just 68 kilograms. So 162 divided by 68. And then my heart rate average was 142. So 531 total time. We had about 4,000 feet of climbing, and 522 because we had to stop, I think, 3 times in that first 100. 37, 51, and then we're lost. And so when you get lost, you're pulling out the paper route sheet and you're trying to make sense of the paper route sheet because you're like, okay, well, that's where we should be. And or someone is, calling up on their phone the ride with GPS file and then looking and then trying to find the trace that you're supposed to be on. And that all takes time. So there you go. But the group was good. We had Matt, Fred, Lori, and myself. And I noticed that Fred kept accelerating on every roller. And I'm like, do you have a power meter? Because, I could see the spider. And apparently, I guess he just didn't have a battery in it or whatever. And he's like, oh, no. And I'm like, well, yeah, I can tell because you keep accelerating on all these rollers. And, I keep my power the same, And so I would let him go up the road. And then he'd have to, ease up and turn around or not turn around, but, look back at us, look back for us. And then we would bridge up again to him. We get to Ventura, which was control 127. So, 1, 2, 3, the third control. We get there at about 1:20 p.m. Like I said, it was a 6 a.m. start. So now, whatever that is, 7 hours, 20 minutes to cover the first 127 miles. So like you could call that the 200K portion. About a 10-minute stop. We refilled bottles, bathroom break, and we're back on the road. Matt is starting to have some issues. He dropped his chain as well. So I'm kind of slowing everyone down because you are stronger as 4 riders together than you are, all split up or even just, 2 riders only, which is what it turned out to be. So after a few times of that, he was off the wheel. Then, like I said, we're going through these farmland areas, and it was just Fred, Lori, and myself. And I mean, there, like an oasis, there was a gas station at like mile 164. And I'm like, all right, let's go in here. Let's get everyone rehydrated and cooled down. So that was great. And I would say there was a good 60 miles of dealing with heat, which of course is a long time when you're on such a long day in the first place. We get to the control at mile 183, 11 hours of total time. It's about 5 p.m. And now, Lori's having some she's been cramping for hours. So I'm like, okay, you've been overheated. We put an ice bag on her. We try to get some fluids in her, try to get some more electrolytes in her. And that was a pretty long stop. It was 34 minutes. And for the entire event, we were only off the bike for 2.5 hours. So 30 minutes was right there. And when I say off the bike, I should say stop time, because it doesn't mean that we were off the bike. You got traffic signals, you got stuff, right? But stop time. So eventually we got Lori refueled, and then Fred catches us at the 183 control in Santa Clarita. And so now we're 3 again, and this is good, right? So let's see, the 200 mile point we hit at 12 hours 43. Normalized power is now down to 150. Heart rate is down to 138 average. The speed is still at 17.5 average speed for that 200 miles, and we've done about 7,000 feet. And again, you're only as fast as your slowest rider. So anytime that anyone has an issue, everyone has to back off their pace to keep everyone together and keep everyone motivated and get them through the course. Again, the overnight control is at 226. We got there at 14 hours, 44 minutes, basically 8:44 p.m. And as we were approaching mile 226, the overnight, I was telling Lori, hey, look, I feel great. It's only 8-ish. And I want to get through this area, and I want to get through all of this LA stuff while the winds are down because the sun has set and everything else. Well, it didn't turn out that way. We had plenty of wind going west. But anyway, we pull in. Like I said, it's 8:40 something. Lori changes her kit. I don't. As I said, I was wearing the skin suit, but I should have, because I started to chafe from mile 226 to the next checkpoint, which was control, which was 290. It was a long stretch, and I should have switched my bottoms. But anyway, so Lori changes. I don't. We put on our overnight stuff, and we're off. So it's, 70, what did I say it was? 70 whatever miles. I'm sorry, 64 miles, but it dragged. It dragged and it dragged. But we get on the bike path in this San Gabriel River bike trail, and usually that at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, you shouldn't have any wind, but God, it was still windy. I couldn't understand why. But we're motoring along, 19, 20 miles an hour, and we don't have any traffic signals, so this is a good time to make some hay, as they say. On this bike path, it's pitch black. It got a little cloudy, so there was no moon to speak of. Lori hits one of the curbs on a, you go underneath the major streets. You go down, you come up, and it's left, right, or something. And, I yelled out curb, and unfortunately, she hit it anyway. And so I was worried now because we're, 240 something miles into this, and she crashes, and I'm thinking, okay, is she jacked up, or is the bike jacked up? What's going to prevent us now from moving forward? And we're on a bike path, and we're in the middle of nowhere, sort of, because it's an unsupported event. It turns out that, Lori had, road rash, hurt her shoulder quite a bit. And I guess later on we found out she had 3 fractured ribs. So anyway, we keep going. We get to mile 290, San Juan Capistrano. We are total time of 19 hours, 26 minutes for 290 miles. It's 1:26 a.m. My average power, my normalized power has dropped again to 143. And heart rate 132, and average speed is like 16.8 for that, pretty close to 300 miles. Now, I was feeling great, and it was 1 something in the morning, and I'm thinking, hey, Lori, let's keep going, because now we're back on our home turf, and if we need to take a rest or a nap or whatever, at least we know where we are. We're in Orange County, we're headed towards San Diego County, and let's keep going. I mean, normally at 1:30 in the morning, I'm not wide awake. I'm having struggles pedaling down the road, but I was having a good night. My nutrition was perfect still. But then I had to change my kit, though. My bottoms were, or my bottom was chafed quite badly, and so I switched over to my Pearl Izumis and more chamois cream, and then I was good. That was a 20-minute stop. Now, one thing about my lights, So this is the light and the clamp, right? So that's the light, and this is the clamp. Now with this clamp, what I like about it is I can swivel it and I can mount it to my drop bar. That way the front where the aero bars are and all that other stuff, I'm not impacting any of that stuff by having a light there or whatever. But this thing started to work itself loose. And if you can see, there's this tiny little screw in there. And then on the other side, there's this little tiny nut. Let me see. Hopefully you can see that. Well, that came loose. I tightened it up, and then eventually I lost it. And so now I'm holding this in my hand. And I'm riding the bike with, on the handlebars like this. And I'm having to hold the light in my hand the whole time. We get to 290, and I had masking tape in the vehicle. So, well, not masking tape, packing tape. And I taped this to the handlebar. But unfortunately, because of all the dew and the moisture, the tape just came undone. So now, I dropped it several times, and then I'm holding it in my hands again. So, I mean, for about 100 miles or more, I had to hold this thing in my hand. Okay, that probably isn't that big of a deal, but what I lost was the ability to move my hands and do, aero bars here, and then brake hoods here, and top of the bar here. I lost the ability to do that. So for over 100 something miles at the back end of this thing, I started to get tight, and things started to get really achy because I was stuck in a position for a long period of time, and that really did suck. So anyway, that's one thing that just kind of, yeah. So anyway, I got a hold of Saigo Light. They sent me another clamp. Everything's fine, but it just was very, 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 very annoying. So let's see. Riding through the night through urban areas, because I've been riding through the night doing these 500 milers through the desert and places like that. But riding through an urban area at night, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning is, it's really quiet. There's hardly anybody out. And I think it's cool. And it reminds me of when I used to commute. So I used to commute 70 miles by bike from Huntington Beach to Encinitas, 70 miles each way. And I'd leave the house at like 3:45 a.m. and get to work at 7:45, take a shower, and then be at my desk by 8 a.m. And then on the return, I'd leave around 4:20-ish, 4:15-ish. And I'd fight a head or onshore wind all the way north. And, that would take me 4 hours and some change. But it was kind of cool. In the morning, there's nobody out, just professional drivers making deliveries and stuff like that. So anyway. All right. So we missed seeing Noreen at the San Luis Rey control. So the last time we actually saw them was at mile 290, and then we saw them again at the finish at 378 or so. And it's kind of what happens, miscommunication or something, but I wasn't going to stop. We had to keep going. All right, so then we get to the finish, which was 26:05, 23:31 of rolling time. And let's see. Yeah, so what things worked well. The bike was perfect. Like I said, no flats, no mechanicals. The air bars were great. Need to keep using those to keep getting comfortable with it. 1040 solar, incredible battery life. My nutrition was perfect. I was never hungry. I never really was burping, which usually means too much calories or your effort's too high for your intake. So, once I got back, I was just like, wow, this feels great. Yeah, I was tired. I was sleep deprived, of course, but yeah, that was great. The things that could work out better, not many. I mean, really just getting this light situation sorted out. Of course, changing my kit sooner is another thing. And, maybe a lot more chamois cream would have helped. But the problem I was having, and the reason I think I chafed, which I normally don't, is just the roads were so tore up that a lot of times, I mean, this happens when you gravel as well. You're not sitting in one spot and everything's fine. You're constantly doing this kind of stuff, and that creates more opportunity for chafing. So I don't know. The Nalini suit works. Nalini bibs work for me. Who knows? Maybe I'll just go with the pearls from beginning to end, and that might be a better scenario for me. I mentioned I would talk about my recovery. So a few days prior to going on the 600K, Jess's family was in town. We did the Disney parks and, tons of kids and tons of people and whatever. The first day I didn't pay much attention to it. The second day I was like, these Purell stations, let me keep my hands a little bit cleaner. So that was, Tuesday. The event was Saturday. It's a huge toll on your system. Your immune system is suppressed. Well, I got COVID and I was down hard for a week's time. Now I think, with my immune system being so taxed, because not only did I ride through the night on the event day, Saturday, but Sunday I didn't sleep very well. Monday I didn't sleep very well. So there was about 2 or 3 days of not getting enough sleep that also, I think, made me more susceptible to things. And it's funny because when you talk to non-ultra, non-endurance people and you say to them, yeah, I got home after, 20-something hours on a bike and a 10,000 kilojoule day, but I couldn't sleep. And they're like, what? I would be asleep for a week. But yeah, it doesn't happen that way for me. So, I don't know. I mean, if you folks have some ideas on how to get a good night's sleep after an ultra. I didn't have that much caffeine to speak of. I had, 3 or 4 Cokes, maybe the entire ride. None of my nutrition powder has caffeine in it. I did have some with me, but I didn't need it. So why could I not sleep, especially Sunday? But then Monday and Tuesday, you'd think, okay, most of your adrenaline rush is over. Let's get some sleep, right? Cortisol, all kinds of stuff are acting up. So anyway, that's my 600K Brevet wrap up. If you have questions, if you have comments, please leave them down below. I hope that I was able to share some information and hope that there were things that you found interesting, entertaining, educational. And if so, please let me know. And onwards, onwards and upwards. There's more longer stuff coming up. As I mentioned, Paris Press Paris is 1,200 kilometers, so 750 miles. And that's coming up on in August 20th. So what to do now after this 600K? Well, you just got to keep your fitness going. And you know, hopefully over the next, what is it? We're in May now, so June, July, August, I got 3 months. Keep the fitness up and make these rides a little longer. And also, you know, we got more daylight hours, so might as well ride some sun up, sun down type of rides, and spend as much time on the bike as possible. Okay, anyway, that's all for today. Please like and subscribe. Please make comments and share my videos. And I look forward to seeing you folks up the road.